Hey guys, if you're enjoying the content I've been putting up, be sure to subscribe so you always know when a new video pops up. Now that we got that part out of the way, let's get into the video. Final Fantasy XIV is a massive game with thousands of hours of content. What I'm going to do here is break down some of the major plot points for those of you who want to know more about Eorzea, but may not have time to experience it all firsthand. This time, we're covering the story of the Crystal Tower. In Mordona, you run into an oddly dressed but strangely familiar man who lets you know about a project going on in the area. Being a curious or maybe just a nosy individual, you go to see what it's all about. Rambros is surprised to see you since the only people who were supposed to know about the project were members of the Sons of St. Koinok, but since you're there, he decides to put you to work. However, the excavation that they're working on is dangerous, so if things go wrong, you might die. Of course, that doesn't do anything but make you excited, and the sight of your friend Sid makes you even more so. Rambros is surprised to hear that you two know each other, but Sid is more than happy to have you along even though you still have no idea what you signed up for. The Warrior of Light is the poster child for leaping before you look, so Sid breaks things down for you since you like to sign contracts before you actually read them. The group known as the Sons of St. Koinok are working on finding the secrets of the ancient Allag Empire, and their current job is on track to reveal more about the ancient civilization than ever before. And while you're no scientist, you have dealt with a lot of ancient Allag tech, including the Ultima weapon. Garleans hadn't built it, Nero had simply turned it on, so you have a more hands-on experience with Allag tech than most, even if your experience lies solely in breaking it. In Mordona, there's a large Allag building called the Crystal Tower, and after seeing the destructive power of Allag relics like the Ultima weapon and the artificial moon Dalamud, it seems like a good idea to study the tower and learn what it does before the thing falls into the wrong hands. That's why Sid contacted the Sons of St. Koinok to set up an expedition into the tower. The building had been buried for thousands of years, but it was unearthed during the calamity. It was only a matter of time before someone went to see what it was, but the place's defenses are still active, and anything trying to pass through the barriers gets blown up. The barriers are produced by 8 statues, and you won't be able to explore the tower without dealing with them, and you can't fly over it because anything that tries is shot out of the sky. Rambros admits that his people are not built to handle dangerous situations, so when they do get access to the tower, they'll need an adventurer to do all of the heavy lifting. And of course, you're eager to do it. There are a lot of things that need to be done, so I'm pretty sure you've already guessed what's coming next. Fetch quests, and a lot of them. The defenses of the tower each use one of the 4 primary elements: earth, fire, wind, and water. So Sid believes that the crystals matching the particular element of the force fields could reflect the energy of the barriers and cause them to overload. You will need the most pure crystals of each element as possible, just like the ones the beast tribes use to summon their primals. So now you get to rob the beast tribes, and the Eorzeans wonder why the different tribes hate them so much and keep summoning their gods to fight you. Being the good little peon that you are, you travel around Eorzea, liberating various members of the different tribes of both their property and their lives. What a great hero you are, murdering people for the sake of science. After gathering all of the crystals, it's on to the next step. As they are, the crystals are useless. They need to be cut and polished before they can work, and that process takes more, very specific materials that you have to fetch. You got 4 crystals of different elements. Now you have to do the same for ether sand, required to make them useful. This isn't something you can find easily due to how rare the ether sand is, so Rambros has put in an order for some at the Goldsmiths Guild in Ul'dah. That way, whenever some does arrive, you'll already have claimed it. He sends you to see if they manage to get any, and he gives you the money to pay for it, but he seems to forget that all the teleporting around you've been doing costs money too. Fortunately for me, I'm a crafter, so Gil isn't really a problem, but he didn't know that. Lucky for you, you get to the Goldsmiths Guild shortly after a shipment of fire-aspected ether sand arrives. However, Biggs is there trying to convince the guild to sell him the sand for whatever project he's working on. Biggs wasn't expecting to see you there, and he's even more shocked to find out that you're working with his boss. He knew Sid was working on something dealing with Allag relics, but he hadn't thought to ask what since he and Wedge were so busy working on a new airship. They've built a prototype, but it needs all 4 different types of ether sand to run. So he's after the same thing that you are, but since the Sons of St. Koinok reserved the sand, you got dibs. Since you're taking what he needs, Biggs wants you to let him join in on your assignment. And to show that he's not useless, he lets you know where to start looking for another bit of sand. There's a peddler in northern Thanalan who is said to deal in earth-aspected ether sand, and Wedge is in the process of hunting him down. Wedge hired an adventurer to be his bodyguard and headed out to Camp Blue Fog, so you head there to find him. You find his bodyguard at the camp, but no Wedge. She's more than happy to tell you the story, although she doesn't seem really happy at all. She and Wedge were looking for the peddler of ether sand just like Biggs told you, but when they found the guy, he'd been robbed by bandits. She and Wedge snuck into the bandits' camp to try to get the sand back. To make a long story short, they sucked at stealth, was seen, and had to run. She and Wedge were separated and she hasn't seen him since. He may still be in the mithril mine, but she thinks that it's more than likely he's dead by now. Not wanting to abandon your friend, you head to the mine where the bandits are stationed, and you find him cowering in a corner trying to psych himself up to make an escape. When he sees you, he starts blabbering on and on about why he's there and such, stuff that, if you didn't already know, it should have been discussed at a different time. I never understand why people start holding casual conversations in the heart of enemy territory, like the world's just gonna pause until you remember that you need to get out of danger. Whatever. On the plus side, Wedge did find the ether sand, but he dropped it while he was running for his life. Instead of letting him wander around the bandit camp, you track down the earth-aspected ether sand and return to Wedge, only for him to decide to join you and Sid at the Crystal Tower too. You bring the 2 bits of sand back to Rambros, and Sid gets back to work on the crystals, although he can't believe that you actually got your hands on any of the sand, let alone 2 of the 4 you needed. Hearing that you got help from Biggs and Wedge is the last thing he expected. As for the wind and water ether sand that you still need, Rambros has made some arrangement that he doesn't seem happy about. He had asked a Charlian friend of his to go to Gridania and get what he needed, but the man just disappeared. Which isn't all that odd for him, but he still doesn't know if something happened to him or not. But there's no time to search for him either. Instead, Rambros sends you to Gridania to see if the Master of the Markets knows where you can buy the remaining materials. He hasn't seen any ether sand on the market board in years, but he knows where you could mine for the water sand. However, it's so dangerous that he wouldn't recommend it. As if that matters to you. The spot is an Earth's gift, but the place is inhabited by a very large hog that murders any and everyone that goes there. When you get to the place, you find the giant hog is already dead, and a voice taunts you for being so slow. The mysterious man has taken the ether sand that you needed, but he decides to make a race out of getting the wind sand. A group of Ixal in the Northern Shroud have some that they keep for purifying their crystals. Your mysterious friend tells you to hurry there before he takes what you want, and you rush off to the Ixali logging grounds. You deal with some Ixali who are not happy that you're robbing them, and you take the wind ether sand. Your mysterious watcher was so excited by your performance that he admits that he didn't even try to get the sand himself, and since he enjoyed seeing you in battle so much, he decides to leave the water ether sand for you as payment for entertaining him. The guy is clearly a bit touched in the head. Just because he claims the whole point of his test was to document the accomplishments and skills of a mighty adventurer doesn't mean he's not crazy. Regardless, you have everything Sid needs to break the barrier around the Crystal Tower, so you head back to Mordona with your prize. Sid works his magic and gets his devices ready shortly before Biggs and Wedge arrive to lend a hand. Another person shows up not long after, and although this is your first time seeing him, you recognize his voice. The man who challenged you to the race for the ether sand turns out to be a Mikode named Grahatia. He also happens to be the one who Rambros had sent to find the sand in the first place, so basically he just pawned off his job onto you. He's been assigned to Rambros' project as an observer, and despite his weirdness, he's not a bad guy. After naming your ragtag group of friends Noah after a famous Allag archmage, you set off to see if Sid's devices are going to work or kill you. Sid, not wanting to risk anyone else's life to see if his projects work, is the first to test it. It works quite well, destroying the first barrier and prompting the rest of you to move forward. With the outer defenses down, Sid suggests that you and a few other adventurers go into the tower first, because if the defenses on the outside were that strong, then there's no telling what's waiting inside. Grahati is not happy about it since it makes it difficult to record your actions if he's outside while you're smashing things, but his knowledge of ancient civilizations will be useful in helping Sid study the broken towers to see how they functioned. He admits that Sid's right, But before you set off, he lets you know that the maze surrounding the base of the tower is called the Labyrinth of the Ancients, and all you should do is take down any hostile things inside before you call him and Sid so they can figure out how to move into the tower proper. The time has come for you to finally begin your journey into the Crystal Tower. Inside, you face all manners of creatures, from void scent to dragons, but you and your friends overcome it all until you come face to face with a living Allag, General Phlegethon. In ancient times, he led a host of revolutions against the Allag Empire, and he was seen as a hero by the common people. But he was eventually captured by the Empire and was experimented on, turning him into a mindless slave. After ending the general, Sid, G'raha, Biggs, and Wedge all show up to admire both your handiwork and the impressive structure. Based off of the findings of the students of Baldesion, the Crystal Tower was built to absorb the energy of the sun like a giant solar panel. G'raha even knew who Phlegethon was, something he figured out just from hearing what kind of weapon the giant man used. Allag history is his favorite subject, and one of the things he read said that the Crystal Tower is guarded by heroes of the old world who were resurrected and augmented by Allag technology, something he could have told you before you went inside. But you didn't die, and you have cleared a path to the tower, so you all head back to the camp to plan what you're going to do next. And I mean that in the literal sense, because we all know that you're going to be doing all of the heavy lifting. Back at the camp, after giving a play-by-play of your adventure in the labyrinth to Rambros, he takes what you told him and combines it with what G'raha discovered to come up with a full analysis of what's been accomplished so far. The expedition is going well considering the fact that it just started. The encounter with the Allag general inside the labyrinth along with the other defenses is a little bit disturbing, however, and it proves Sid's earlier fears, that the calamity didn't simply reveal the Crystal Tower, it woke it up. The tower's secrets are far too dangerous to share with the world. Short of blowing the place up, the only way to make sure it doesn't end up in the wrong hands is to find a way to turn it back off, this time for good. But if you want to turn it off, you have to figure out how it works, which means you'll have to go into the tower itself, and you know that'll be dangerous, probably even more dangerous than the labyrinth. With that in mind, Rambros decides to study the tower's defenses before sending you inside, and of course Sid and his crew are up for the challenge. While they work, G'raha decides to go and train his body so he'll be strong enough to join you in the battle this time, but Rambros stops him and sends him to help Sid. He pouts like a baby, but he will do as he's asked. So everyone heads off to do what they need to prepare for your trip into the circus tower. While you're all busy, the man who told you about the expedition in the first place goes to survey the wreckage of the tower's external barrier. He's quite impressed with Sid's handiwork, and the path you cleared into the tower allows him to detect a power at the top, something that's even more powerful than the ultimate weapon. And he should know, since he turns out to be the Garlean scientist who had worked under Gaius on the ultimate weapon project, Nero. When you make it back to the camp, Rambros lets you know that they haven't made much progress with the tower. They found a lot of new things in the labyrinth, but they still haven't been able to get to the tower. The entrance to Circus Tower is guarded by very advanced technology that they haven't been able to get through, and until they figure out how to get inside, there's not much for you to do. As luck would have it, two oddly dressed individuals called Unai and Doga arrive at the camp before you leave. They say that they were sent by the students of Baldesion to help, but Rambros hadn't gotten any messages saying they were coming, and with the incident at the Isle of Val, mainly the explosion of magic that moved the island somewhere else entirely, the students of Baldesion have more important things to worry about. And those worries can be summed up in one word: Eureka. For those of you who don't know about it, you will. But that is a story for another day. Doga assumes that the incident is the reason why the message didn't reach Rambros, but he promises that they are there to help. G'raha's eye, the red one, begins to ache, and although he dismisses it as nothing, Unai notices that his eye is the same as theirs. The red eyes are a trait unique to Allag royalty, and it has been passed down in G'raha's family for generations, which explains his fascination with the Allagans. He's a descendant of their race. Only one child of every generation is born with the Allagan eye, and his search for knowledge has been all about finding out what it means and why he only has one. So he's more than eager to hear anything that the newcomers have to say. Sadly, they don't know much other than the fact that those born with those eyes are bound to the fate of Allag, which is why G'raha has been drawn to the ancient empire, and it's the reason why they are there. Since it can't hurt to let them help, Rambros welcomes them to the group and takes you all to see what you can learn about the entrance to Circus Tower. Sid's waiting by a massive door, and after the newcomers are introduced, he breaks down what's going on. The large door leads to the circus tower, but it's sealed and there's no way to break through. He's used everything from a pickaxe to a cannon, and nothing's even left a mark on it. The only hint they have on how to open the door is a device on the door with a man and woman carved into it. But for all they know, the device could be decoration or just a fancy doorbell. The two newcomers simply walk up to the door, lift their hands, and poof, it opens. Clearly they are more than they claim, something you should have picked up on from their full set of Allag gear, but before they can explain, Nero shows up. Sid's shocked that the man's still alive after the battle at the Praetorium, and Nero doesn't blame him for being uneasy about him being there, since he did try to kill you with a really big hammer last time he saw you. But he's no longer welcome in Garlemald. After his failure with the Ultima weapon, the 14th Legion is defunct, and if any of them go home, they'll probably be executed. Since Nero likes being alive, he's been wandering around Eorzea. He ended up hearing about what Sid was working on, and decided to come and join him. As a sign of his willingness to work with you, he reveals what he knows about Unai and Doga. The Crystal Tower was a symbol of ancient Allag power, and access was only given to royalty, and a few others. From what Nero learned, only people with royal blood can open the door. The Emperor and his heirs were literally living keys. Unai and Doga are clones of those heirs. They didn't want to lie to you, but without proof, if they had come out and said what they were, you probably would have thought they were crazy. They have a lot more to tell you, so you all head back out away from the tower to talk, and Nero goes to follow you, although Sid's not happy about it even after the man gives him an Allag tombstone filled with information that the 14th Legion had gathered about the ancient empire. Once everyone is gathered, Unai and Doga tell you everything, and to understand it all requires a bit of a history lesson. The Allag Empire had reached its peak long before they were made. At that time, the Crystal Tower stood, absorbing the energy of the sun and powering the entirety of the empire. But the ease of life that the tower brought caused the empire to grow stagnant. Without a strong leader, the empire became a shadow of its former self. And wanting to restore its nation, a scientist named Amon made it his mission to return Allag to its former glory. And he believed that only one man could do it. So he worked to resurrect the founder of the empire, Emperor Zand. As part of the experiment, Amon made clones of the Emperor's descendants. The Unai and Doga standing before you are a part of that very experiment. Historical texts talked about the reign of two emperors named Zand, and everyone believed that the second was someone named after the first, but no one had ever guessed that they were both the same man. But Amon succeeded in resurrecting Zand, and he did restore the empire, but he wanted more. In his first life, Zand had wanted to bring the entire world under Allag rule. He failed the first time, but since he was given a second chance, he has no intention of failing again. Knowing that he needed more power to achieve his goal, Zand sought the power of darkness. He transformed the Crystal Tower into a research facility to help him study and harness this new power. Sid remarks that it's fortunate that all of this happened so long ago that it's no longer a threat, but Doga shatters your hopes. Emperor Zand is still alive and well inside of Circus Tower, and he's not happy that his empire fell. Drawing on the power of darkness takes a lot of energy, too much even for the Crystal Tower. To increase its power, the moon Dalamud was made and launched into the sky to draw in the sun's energy and channel it into the tower. Unfortunately, they miscalculated, and a surge of energy caused an earthquake that caused the calamity that brought about the Fourth Umbral Era and destroyed the Allag Empire. But as the Crystal Tower sank into the earth, Amon used magic to stop time from flowing inside the tower's walls. Everyone inside, the Emperor included, were all put to sleep, and they stayed that way until Dalamud was messed with during the Meteor Project, which caused the tower to reappear, and Zand to awaken. His first act was to summon the darkness that he hungered for, and like so many others, he was corrupted by it. And even though his empire is long dead, he still plans on conquering the whole world. That is why Unai and Doga exist, to fulfill the wishes of the original Unai and Doga who they were cloned from, and kill Zand before he destroys the world. When they woke in the tower, they realized that they couldn't beat Zand on their own, so they went out to hunt for allies. And because they saw you fight your way through the labyrinth, they know that you can help them beat the Emperor. Of course, saving the world once again falls on your shoulders. Only this time, you get to face off against the man who founded the greatest empire in history, and his soldiers, including a scientist who not only figured out how to revive the dead, but managed to stop time itself. Inside of the tower, you face off against the scientists Amon's experiments, like Scylla, a former Allag archmage who Amon tricked into undergoing one of his experiments. He had told her that she would end up with eternal life when he was done with her, but when she woke from the procedure, he had replaced her head with a pack of wild dogs. That should not be funny, but it kind of is. I have a messed up sense of humor. There are also more clones of Unai and Doga that you have to contend with, as well as Glacia Labolas, a loyal commander of the Imperial Honor Guard who Amon successfully granted eternal life to until you poke him with a lot of sharp things to end all of his living. You then have the pleasure of ending Amon himself before coming face to face with Zand. After taking down the Emperor, Unai and Doga decide how they will seal off the tower for good, while Nero, obviously, plans some mischief of his own. They can either separate the tower from the outside world or block its ability to produce energy, turning it into nothing more than a shiny building. She leaves it up to you to decide, but first she and Doga have to deal with the rift that opened above the throne after Zand fell. The rift is a portal into the void, the world of darkness as the Allagans called it. You may know it better as the 13th Shard, the one that the Ascians accidentally destroyed when they first began their attempts at rejoining all the shards together, and the darkness Zand was trying to channel was, of course, an army of Voidsent. Zand had made a magical pact with the Voidsent leader. In exchange for them working for him, he would open a void gate that would give them free access to the source, your world. Meaning, in short, Voidsent would no longer have to make pacts with mages or get summoned into lesser bodies to get here. They would be able to come and go as they pleased. Having fought countless Voidsent, you should know that having an entire planet full of them coming to visit would not be a good idea. Even though Zand is dead, the contract he made has not been broken, but since the clones share his bloodline, they can end the deal. They reach out to seal the rift, and while they work, Nero's device begins to go haywire as something more powerful than anything he's ever seen approaches. From within the rift, a voice says that the covenant will not be broken so easily before an army of clones appear, sparking a vision from the Echo. That really needs to stop happening when fighting's about to start. You see Zand sitting on his throne in front of a small group of clones, talking about how Mera City has been taken, and it won't be long before everything is under Allagan rule. But he still sees visions of his death and the void he floated in when his life came to an end. And despite all of his power, he's scared to die again, knowing that all that he's accomplished will mean nothing once he's gone. It's at that moment that he decides to destroy everything. If everything ends in nothing anyway, he'll make sure that he doesn't experience it alone. To bring about the end, he tells his people to draw more power into the tower so he can allow the cloud of darkness full access to the world so she can consume it all. You bounce out of the vision in the middle of a full-scale battle. Sid and the others are holding off the clones, but more and more keep coming. All of them are being controlled by a massively powerful Voidsent that reaches out of the rift and snatches Unai and Doga. Nero, wanting to master the power of darkness himself and needing the clones to do it, rushes forward to save them, only to be captured and pulled into the rift with them. From within the rift, the cloud of darkness speaks, letting you know that she intends to consume the light and return your world to the void before the rift closes and the clones collapse. Not knowing what else to do, you all leave the tower to see if Rambros has any ideas. He's shocked to hear about all that happened, but he's positive that the rift that opened was a void gate. Geniuses really have a knack for stating the obvious. There are a lot of different types of Voidsent, and the more powerful the creature, the larger the gate has to be for them to come through. To let something as powerful as the cloud of darkness through will require a massive gate unlike any that had ever been made before. To put things into perspective the best way I can, the cloud of darkness is probably the equivalent of Eden, but where Eden emitted a flood of light on the first, the cloud of darkness obviously emitted a flood of darkness. I am going to have to do some research to find out just why the Voidsent are so much more intelligent than the Sin Eaters. I mean, they're a stupid Voidsent, like those floating eyeballs, for instance. But between Diabolos, Ferdiad, Scathah, Lilith, and the Cloud of Darkness, Voidsent are clearly more evolved than their light ether counterparts. And it could be because the Sin Eaters have only existed for about 100 years, while if time sped up on the 13th Shard the same way it did on the first, there's no telling how many thousands of years have passed since the first Voidsent came about. But that's just a theory. In any case, Rambros doesn't know how to help your friends. There are no documented cases of people entering the void. It's possible that your friends died the minute they were pulled through the rift. Regardless, Graha refuses to give up on saving Unai and Doga. Not only because he feels connected to them because of his eye, but if you don't save them, there will be no way to break the bargain Zand made with the cloud. Sid agrees, mainly because if you leave Nero where he is, there's no telling what kind of trouble he could cause. Honestly, even though he would never admit it, he still considers Nero a friend. So they all get to work on figuring out how to get your friends back. With so many geniuses working on the problem, you know it won't take long for them to solve it. Sadly, their research into how to save your friends reveals something else. The Crystal Tower is still absorbing energy, and without Unai and Doga, there's no way to stop that either. From what Nero's tombstone told them, in ancient times, Allag royalty had a method of giving their blood to others. That was the only reason Amon and the others could even control the tower, since they weren't royalty. You don't have that ability, and since the tower has built up so much energy, blowing it up will cause an immeasurable amount of damage to the world, maybe even worse than the last calamity. G'raha does have an idea. Since the energy is being absorbed to open a void gate anyway, you can use the energy to open a gate of your own that will let you pass into the world of darkness. Sid is already working on the project, and in true Sid fashion, he's already done. With time slipping away, you all head back to the tower. Sid has his team power up his machine, and a portal into the world of darkness opens. However, it's not stable, and it won't be open for long. Sid decides to stay behind to keep the gate open for as long as he can while you go to rescue your friends. But this time, G'raha decides to come with you. He's felt himself changing since he met the clones. Something's been bothering him, something that he can't remember, and he feels that it's forcing him to see all of this through with his own eyes. So it's into the world of darkness you both go. Void scent litter every corner of the darkness-covered world, forcing you to do battle with everything from clones of Zan himself to a massive 5-headed dragon that Amon had built to face off against the dragon legions of Mericidia. Seems like your friends weren't the only things that the cloud of darkness drew into the void. Finally, you come face to face with the cloud of darkness herself, and you manage to push her back long enough for Nero to show up, carrying an unconscious Unai with Doga by his side. The wounds he had taken had allowed the darkness of the void to disrupt the ether of his body, making him look like a purple glow stick. The contract that Zan made with the cloud protects Unai and Doga from suffering the same fate. The cloud can't kill them herself, which is why she brought them there so other void scent can do the job. They both would have been long dead had Nero not protected them, something he makes sure to remind you that he only did for his own reasons. Unai wakes up, and seeing you there, she believes that they still have a chance to complete the mission and break the contract linking the cloud to your world. Of course, the cloud is having none of that, and she lashes out. You couldn't possibly hope to kill her in her world, but she's struggling to hold her form together after your battle, which makes the clone think this is their best chance to break the covenant. But you all have to leave now, because once that link is severed, the bridge linking the world of darkness to the Crystal Tower will vanish. G'raha pleads with the clones to come with you because they are the only ones who can shut down the tower, and while he's talking, the cloud shoots him, only to discover that she can't hurt him either. The reason he has the Allag eye is because he is a direct descendant of not just any Allag bloodline, but Zan's very own, which means he can use the Crystal Tower too. The clones believe that in an attempt to keep the Allag bloodline alive, someone must have implanted their gifts into G'raha's ancestors. The Crystal Tower won't recognize him as Allag because his blood is so diluted, but the clones share their own power with him so he will have full access to the tower. When the transfer is complete, both of G'raha's eyes turn red, allowing his Allag nature to be fully revealed. Not wanting to die, you, Nero, and G'raha sprint away, while Unai and Doga stay behind to finish their mission. The gate is closing as you all race across the bridge, but the corruption in Nero's body makes it hard for him to keep up. He tells you to leave him, and after hearing a voice saying that the Crystal Tower needs to once again become a beacon of hope for mankind, you leave Nero behind. The clones manage to break the covenant, which also frees Nero from the corruption, and although the gate is nearly closed when he reaches it, Sid reaches through and pulls Nero out in the nick of time. Everyone's happy to see that you made it back, but they're sad to hear about the fate of the clones. Fortunately, G'raha can seal the tower, although he needs a moment to rest first. He decides to hang back in the tower for a moment while you all head back to camp. Back at the camp, while you're all discussing the series of events you just went through, a member of the Sons of St. Cornoc come running up, screaming about how G'raha ordered them all out of the tower. He's acting strange, so you all rush back to see what's gotten into him. He stops you as you get closer, warning you that the door to the tower has already started to close, and he's staying inside, as he finally understands his purpose. After Zan caused the calamity, survivors stood in the ruins looking for the tower, but it was gone. However, they prayed that it would return to them since it had become a beacon of hope for their people. The last member of the royal line who had survived the destruction, Princess Selena, heard their cries, so she used her resources to implant her blood and memories into G'raha Tia's ancestor, so that one day, one of them could return the tower to its former glory. Unai and Doga giving him their blood also gave him the memories of his ancestor, and he plans on fulfilling their dream of making the tower a beacon of hope to the world as it was in ancient times. But as the world is now, the tower's powers are far too advanced, and people trying to use it without having the knowledge of the most basic Allagan tech could be disastrous. But if they wait for the world to catch up, then the Allagan bloodline may be long dead and the tower would be useless, which is why G'raha decided to stay inside of the tower. Knowing what he knows now, he can put the tower to sleep like Amon did, and he will remain inside, immortal, until the day someone figures out how to open the door. Then and only then will he share the knowledge and power of the tower with the world. While you all hate to lose your friend, you know that he's right. As the gates seal, Sid and the others vow to catch up to Allag quickly so you can all be reunited. But until then, many adventures await you, on this world and on others. This concludes the story of the Crystal Tower. If you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up and make sure you subscribe so you don't miss out on the next video.